my name is Gianna Hoover, and I'm a student at Vassar College and an intern at Work Wisdom here today interviewing Kedren Crosby. Thank you so much for joining.
I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Awesome. Well, would you take a moment to just like introduce yourself and your role and just kind of get us
Sure.
started with that? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm Kedren Crosby. I'm the founder of Work Wisdom. We're now in our 10th year. And so I started Work Wisdom in 2015,
Mm,
mostly because I really felt like there was no organization like ours. There was no place to go for help if
mm,
you needed culture shaping or executive coaching. Um, and I felt like there was just nothing like it in the marketplace. So I felt like, well, I guess I need to create it.
amazing. And would you say the mission has kind of evolved or changed over time or kind of stuck to the original
Yeah.
foundation, what you guys kind of started?
Yeah. Yeah, when we came out of the gate, originally it was just me, but when we came out of the gate, we were really focused on how do we help people have high performance mindsets,
Mm,
behaviors, habits,
mhm.
communication, so that they can have really exceptional cultures. And
Yes.
so that was the our winning aspiration at the beginning. It's still our winning aspiration today. We're really focused on revolutionizing
Mm,
how people achieve. So, how they come to high performance in a really integrated way that is maybe sometimes even a little non-traditional.
yeah,
But yeah, it hasn't really changed. We've sort of been doing the same thing for 10 years.
that's amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
And what aspects would you say of your work do you find the most rewarding? And has that maybe even changed kind of through the years?
Wow, great question. I would say evergreen for me is the
Mhm.
clients. Yeah, so I have to this day and from day one found the clients to be most rewarding. However, I'm getting closer and closer to retirement. So people like you, young people who are going to be taking the reins someday, that is really motivating to
Oh,
me.
I love that so much. And
Yeah.
okay, so as a certified emotional intelligence practitioner, how would you say like emotional intelligence like shapes leadership? And then also, are there some ways that you could specifically talk about like ways that leaders can kind of tap into that or develop their emotional intelligence?
Mm, wow, I could talk about this for like, I don't know, 2 years. But
Amazing.
I think one thing is just understanding what emotional intelligence is, how it differs from cognitive intelligence, and how it has an outsized impact on
Mhm.
your success and your contagion on your team. So I think that would be the first thing is just to understand what emotional intelligence is and how you can manage your own. It's never fixed.
Mhm.
Cognitive intelligence from about 5 years old is like fixed. But EQ, you can always grow. And so that makes it really optimistic. I think also knowing what derailers are. And so things like stress tolerance, things like low independence, the inability to solve problems when emotions are involved, they can really derail you as a leader. So getting skillful and putting some tools in that toolbox and
Yeah,
those toolboxes, I think is really essential for a leader. And, in times of uncertainty and tumult, emotional intelligence is even more important as a leader. So really doubling down on it during periods like we're experiencing in the States right now.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I feel like yeah, it's huge. It's foundational. It's you kind of have to like look inward before you can do anything, even as a leader or just as a person. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's
Um,
right.
and would you say like what does authentic leadership then like mean to you and how do leaders sort of like cultivate it maybe within themselves, but then also like organizations?
Yeah. Well, there's a thing called authentic leadership, and it was like TM by Bill George. So
Okay.
he used to run this company called Medtronic, and they made pacemakers. And
Mhm.
so he did that very successfully for a long time. And then when he retired, he went over to Harvard to teach at Harvard Business School, and he wrote a wonderful book. This was probably in the 80s. I should know this year, but called Discover Your True North. And it was about authentic leadership. It was the first time someone was saying, you don't have to shine it on. You don't have to be someone you're not. You
Mhm.
can actually tap into who you are, know yourself better, and lead from there.
Mm,
So I'm old school, and when I think authentic leadership, I think about Bill George
okay.
and the beautiful lessons that he taught us around knowing what your values are and being congruent with
Mm,
those values and leading from that space to inspire others. Also, really digging into your crucibles. So,
mm,
these times in your life that, like, you were put into a crucible and melted
yeah.
almost beyond recognition, like, am I going to come out? Am
Mm,
I going to survive? But you're being reformed,
ooh,
just like in a crucible, like iron and a horseshoe. You're getting reformed by that hardship. So that's a big part of authentic leadership, is knowing what have your crucibles been that have reformed you as
wow.
a person, that
Yeah,
have strengthened you so that you're even better.
it's amazing. That's
Yeah.
powerful.
I
Applied
know.
individually and to organizations. That's
Yeah.
just general. Like that is,
Yeah.
wow, that is amazing.
Yeah. It is amazing. And, our field is really positive organizational behavior, which is the first cousin to positive psychology. So we're often thinking, okay, how is this thing that feels hard
Yeah.
strengthening me?
Mm,
Or what am I, so we're kind of trying to look at anti-fragile. Like, how am I getting strengthened through this difficulty?
wow, I love that. That's awesome. And then my next question is, so you've worked a lot with kind of culture transformation and the cultures within organizations kind of thing. And so I'm wondering like what are the key indicators of a positive culture or maybe more of a toxic culture and like where that's kind of moving into each like oh, are we moving towards this? Are we moving towards that? Like what are those indicators for you that you sort of
Mm.
recognize?
Mhm. Well, I think the first thing is to recognize that it's not like there's a good culture or a bad culture. It's just there are so many different types of culture. And we use a couple different frameworks to
Mm,
diagnose who are we now
mm,
and who do we want to be in
mm,
terms of our culture, and then how do we shift our behavior. So you're in higher ed right now. The whole world of higher education is really steeped in tradition,
mm,
and so that's a certain culture, typically a hierarchical culture.
mm.
But for relevancy and the future, often they're looking at how do we become more innovative.
Yep.
So they're trying to think about, okay, what are the behaviors I'm going to have to, we're collectively
Mm,
going to adopt, and then what are the ones that we have to drop and
mm.
sunset so
Wow.
that we can become a more innovative culture.
Right.
So it's always just an evolution. It's a shifting of, okay, who are we now?
Mm.
Not shaming it, but
Yeah.
saying, it got us here, but it won't get us there. And
Mm.
how do we, what do we drop and what do we add? And how do we morph our mindsets and our behaviors so we get there to that new place?
Mm. It's
So
full
it's detailed and,
way,
yeah,
not
individual.
black and white. Yes, absolutely.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Awesome. And so what are some of the biggest maybe mistakes then that you sort of notice organizations make when trying to then manage that conflict, like whether trying to kind of move into that more positive space? Like what are those ways? And then also how would you then approach it to like manage that effectively?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when there's transition,
Yeah.
uh, and the conflict
Mm,
that normally comes, the rub that normally comes from a transition in culture,
okay.
I would say some of the big mistakes, sort of amateur hour as leaders, is we start by selling the solution before we've sold the problem. So human nature is we won't let go of the past
No.
until we believe there was a reason why we had to let go of that past. If it's big or
Mm,
little, even like software,
mm,
like we got to move away from DOS,
right.
to the Google suite, right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing that happens very often is the leaders come out of the gate saying, Google Suite's going to be amazing and we can, be on the internet and, whatever. It'll talk to QuickBooks before they've said, we've got to let this go. It just doesn't
Mhm.
work for us. It's holding us back. It's constraining us. So that's one. There are really thousands. I mean, there are just so many ways that we can make mistakes.
Right.
But
That's, yeah.
maybe learning how to normalize
Mm,
moving transition and learning what the typical emotions are
mm,
when we move through culture change and saying, "Hey, I see that you're angry, or I see you're frustrated, or I see you're apathetic,
yeah.
and that's normal." And guess what? We're going to keep on painting the picture, and we're going to talk together, and we're going to empower so that you can get to the other side. But
Right.
we're not going to rush you, but we are going to keep pushing.
Baby
Yeah.
steps here, accept the
Yeah.
problem first, and then we can move towards that space.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's
Exactly.
amazing. Well, okay. And my next question then is this is more about you. How do you balance being a keynote speaker and then an executive coach, and then also this thought leader and running work wisdom and like just as a powerhouse? How are you balancing everything? How does that work?
Wow. Is this the part where I break into tears?
Yes, I think so.
Say not very well. No, I think actually I've learned through failure,
Mm,
as we do, but I think the way it is working
mm,
is through empowerment.
yes.
So truly, uh, you know, really having incredible people
Mm,
around me and um, knowing how to trust and
mm,
those incredible people and set them up for success, giving
mm,
them the bumpers and the training
mm,
and the compassion and the non-shaming if they mess up, and get back up. So I think that the answer to your question is through the constructive, bi-directional sharing of power so
mm,
we can scale the good that comes out of work wisdom.
takes a team. That's
It
amazing.
sure does. And your mom's a big part of it,
Yes.
and you're a part of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I love that. And then also, so you've kind of written a lot about like burnout and then that work-life integration, that balance. So what are some of the most common challenges that you see leaders face in those areas? And then maybe some strategies that you recommend to overcome that area of things.
hmm Yeah, I think it really does come back to sharing responsibility.
Mm,
So I think to be a sustainable leader,
yeah.
um, we have to understand how to share the work and
Mm,
the ownership of the
yes.
work. And I think it requires some firmness. We
Mm,
have to sometimes drop being uh, liked. This
mm.
is hard for leaders. Uh,
Yes.
this is where Mike McKenna calls me Sister Mary Kedren.
Oh,
But that we have to understand that sometimes we're clear, we're kind, we're firm
right.
in how we share the responsibility. I also think it's really critical that we sunset
Mm,
things that aren't working. So
mm,
I'm a big believer in what we call elegant leadership at Work Wisdom, which means that we're essentialist.
mm,
We're noticing what's working and we're doing more of that. And if there's something it's not working and it's like pushing a boulder up a hill, yeah, we're
right.
going to just sunset that. We're just moving that over here, put it on our fail wall in
Yeah.
Slack. Uh, say, what did we learn from that thing? I don't know. Uh, but the more that the team trusts that we're not going to waste a lot of time on something that's not helping us win,
Mm,
revolutionize achievement, I think the more they trust that if I'm asking them to own something, it's really valuable.
right. And
Mhm.
that's hard for some people too. And it's really about breaking that down. Right. Yeah. That makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah. And then just in terms back to like the organizational behavior, like what current trends do we kind of see in organizational behavior and what is that? How does that excite you?
Yeah. Well, I think some of the things that we've been talking about for a really long time about the importance of culture and
Hmm.
the importance of sharing power.
Mm,
the importance of authenticity.
mhm,
All of these we know are features of modern leadership.
mm,
So McKinsey's been writing a lot, kind of everybody in research is writing a lot about how leadership is changing.
mm,
And what we want from our leaders is more empowerment. We want to feel valued.
mm.
And we want to truly be valued, not, just be, feel valued, but we want to be valued. We want our opinions to count.
Yeah,
And so I would say a lot of the things that I've always cared a lot about are becoming vogue
yeah.
right now, which is great. Command and control leadership is dead.
Mm,
And so, because I said so, that's not working for anybody,
right.
and
Yeah.
so and it's interesting because some of the features of historically
Mm,
women-led
mm,
organizations, feminist leadership, is now sort of becoming leadership in general, more
yeah.
collaborative, more empowered.
Mm.
Yeah. So I'm excited about a lot of it.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. That's amazing. I love that it's now just leadership. It's not
Is
specific
it?
being a woman.
Right.
Right? That's great.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so if someone is considering maybe a career path in executive coaching, organizational behavior, or even just like leadership consulting in general, do you have
Mm,
any advice or recommendations to kind of help them succeed?
that is such a good question. I would say, um, make mistakes,
Mm,
try things, make mistakes, figure out what you're learning from your mistakes. Um, I think there's a lot of value in studying and learning frameworks that are valuable, but then experimenting with them and getting the reps in and trying them out yourself. So I think it would be hard to go straight from, a bachelor's or master's degree straight into some of this type of work
mm.
because, sorry, the lights turned out.
Okay.
Because you need to scrape your knees
Mm,
and need to get the reps in. Um,
yeah.
but I'm not totally sure about that, but
Well,
I,
clients too, the more you're getting to know kind of what works and what doesn't, and like
yeah,
patterns and trends, I would assume too.
yeah, 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 so I think there's a lot of sort of what can you put into your brain that
Mm,
can make you helpful
yeah.
to others? Um, but how can you scrape your knees in smart ways so that you've got the muscle memory about
Mm,
like, oh yeah, I know that gutter because I
yeah.
lived there for a year, and
You're
so I
right.
can help you climb out of it. I know the first thing to do. Um,
Mm,
I'm not sure that's a very good answer, but I think that's what I would say.
that's amazing. Well, okay. Well, thank you so, so much. All of your answers were outstanding, and it was a pleasure speaking with you. And yeah, that was it. Thank you so much for joining.
Well, it was really good seeing you.